This timeline to the coming 7-year tribulation and the millennium is, I believe, biblically correct according to the information we can gather from the Bible and historical records. The main difference with this timeline compared to most other timelines is that I believe the 7-year tribulation period actually straddles the crossover point in time between the end of the 6,000-year dispensation allotted to Satan and the coming 1,000-year millennium, where Christ will set up his millennium kingdom, rule with a rod of iron, and where Satan and his demons are bound in spiritual chains until the end of the millennium and the 7,000 years. What becomes clear is that the typical biblical 7-year period has been divided into two halves of 3.5 years. It started with Jesus' ministry 2,000 years ago and will conclude with the second half of the tribulation period, which is also 3.5 years, also referred to as 42 months or 1,260 days. As we shall see shortly in Isaiah 61, Jesus purposely divides this scripture into two parts, and they will be separated by 2,000 years. With the second half, often referred to as the Great Tribulation or the time of God's wrath and vengeance, occurring during God's time of the millennium period so as not to take this time away from the full time allotted to Satan's rule. Starting from the left of the timeline, a much debated topic is the year of Jesus' birth, and best estimates will place it at 3 or 4 BC, when we appreciated that King Herod died around 1 BC. But the most important date to try and determine is then the year of Christ's crucifixion, with most estimates ranging from 30 AD up to 33 AD. One of the best explanations is covered by Chuck Missler in his teaching Was Jesus Crucified on a Friday or on a Wednesday? There is a link in the description below, and once we appreciate that Jesus is crucified before the Passover high Sabbath, John chapter 19 verse 31, and will remain in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights, then the only day that will work and fit is a Wednesday crucifixion and a resurrection before Sunday morning directly after the regular Saturday Sabbath. By using both stellarium or the U.S. Navy Astronomical Department calculations as covered by Pastor G. Reckart, a link for his work is in the description below. The only date at this time that will allow for a Wednesday crucifixion and a subsequent Passover on a full moon is Thursday the 6th of April 30 AD. So from this date we can work backwards 3.5 years to establish that Jesus' ministry must have started around the time of the fall feasts of September and October 26 AD. It would be too long to go into a biblical study of the 6,000 years dispensation allotted to Satan and the fall of man, but in summary we have 2,000 years from Adam to Abraham, 2,000 years from Abraham to Jesus, 2,000 years from Christ to the millennium, and then a 1,000-year Sabbath millennium to complete the full 7,000 years. In Hosea 6 verse 2, after 2 days he will revive us, and on the 3rd day he will raise us up, that we may live before him. It is generally agreed that the 2 days referred to as 2,000 years. At the very beginning of Jesus' ministry we can read in Luke 4 verse 18, that Jesus goes to speak in the synagogue in Nazareth, and he purposely reads from the book of Isaiah 61 and reads verses 1 and 2. These verses are recognized as messianic verses, and hence Jesus is claiming to be the Messiah, but he purposely does not finish the last line of verse 2, and the day of vengeance of our God. This is because the next 3.5 years would be fulfilling the first part of his ministry, and the second half relating to the day of God's vengeance would not take place for another 2,000 years and take place during the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period, which is also known as the period of God's wrath. Again, Chuck Missler does an excellent teaching on Luke 4 verse 14 and Isaiah 61, and I will leave a link in the description. At the beginning of the tribulation period, the Antichrist establishes a covenant for 7 years, and in the middle of the week of 7 years, he breaks the covenant and sets up an image in the third temple, which in Daniel 9 verse 27 and Daniel 12 verse 11. We can see the Antichrist mimicking and paralleling Christ's ministry also for 3.5 years. Revelation 13 verse 5, and the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. Revelation 13 verse 7. Also it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. An authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. As this event takes place in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, it would make sense and perfect symmetry that it would happen at Passover and at 2,000 years after Jesus Christ presented himself as the Passover lamb. This Passover is most likely to be April 17, 2030. If this date is correct, we can count back 1,260 days, which will bring us to December 17, 2026 for the approximate start of the tribulation period.